Hello everyone and thank you for joining. My name is Sævar and I'm a solution architect for Central Connect. Here with me as well is Daði Karlsson, the CTO of LS Retail. Today we want to give you some updates about the Central Connect. So before we start, I want to talk a little bit about LS Central. LS Central is a retail and hospitality solution that is built on top of Microsoft Business Central and extends this head office. This is how we leverage the investment in the Microsoft Dynamics ecosystem. There are more than 40,000 businesses worldwide that are using Business Central as their ERP, and LS Central has been recognized by Gartner as one of the leading vendors in the digital POS application. This is amongst the reason why LS Retail is getting more attention from customers using other well-known ERP systems. So LS Central is globally used, and our value proposition has for many years been that LS Central is a global POS solution, which gives our LS Central point of sale a unique market advantage. We have a global presence that is unmatched by our competitors, which makes LS Retail the ideal provider for retailers who want to work with the same solution in all of the regions and countries where we operate. If you look at the competition, some of our competitors have a good coverage in multiple regions with maybe one or two verticals, and other competitors have a good coverage in many verticals, but in only a handful of regions. On the other hand, LS Retail gives us a unique coverage in 23 verticals in multiple countries as well. This is why we state that one of our main strengths is that we can operate as a global POS solution. Again, this is something that is catching more attention from the big and global players. Now let's look at what Central Connect is. Central Connect is a middleware that is built by LS Retail in a Microsoft ecosystem. We use standardized integration framework using the Microsoft Azure environment. We handle the master data synchronization for data coming from SAP and deliver it to LS Central. The data is stored in Azure containers, so it never leaves the Azure tenants. We use message queues to control the flow of data between the endpoints. There will be two options available: the sales export, where all of the sales in LS Central are sent once a day when the statement posting is done. The other option is to send transactions over near real time and allow SAP Retail to handle the statement posting. This is currently in development and we will let you know once that's finished. Finally, we have configurable data mapping, limiting the need for custom coding. User sets up the data mapping and maintain in the Central Connect UI that is provided in the Central Connect AL package. To mention some of the benefits of using Central Connect, then we first start with the fact that with Central Connect, much of the transformation and mapping logic is handled outside of SAP. This reduces the need for custom coding or extensions, so we minimize risk, accelerate delivery, and keep SAP core clean. We have flexibility for hybrid scenarios. This solution is not only for SAP, we support other ERP systems as well, such as Oracle and Microsoft Finance and Operation, or F&O, to mention some. In e-commerce, Central Connect allows us to expose inventory and transactional data to e-commerce platforms in a controlled, consistent way. This ensures that stock availability, pricing, and order information are always aligned between online and back office systems. Then we have the POS click and collect by synchronizing the store inventory with SAP. Central Connect makes click and collect scenarios straightforward. Customer can order online, pick up in store, and both SAP and LS Central are kept in sync with accurate stock position. When we support dropshipment, Central Connect ensures that orders created in LS Central flow through SAP to vendors and that confirmation are reflected into the retail system without manual intervention. And because Central Connect is Azure-based and API-driven, it scales easily. As transaction volume grows, the hub can handle additional throughput without requiring re-architecting of, of the SAP or LS Central system. It acts as a hub which is easily pluggable with new systems. So it isn't built only for SAP. It basically can connect with other third-party logistics providers, for example, or e-commerce platforms, and that is basically integrated using the same message structure with limited changes. As long as the third-party system can access Azure, we can provide the data needed with the help of LS Central Connect. By decoupling LS Central from SAP, upgrades or migrations to S/4HANA becomes easier. Central Connect ensures that existing mappings can be reused with minimal changes, so the transition to cloud or private deployments is smoother. Because the integration layer is reusable, standardized, and API-driven, organizations see a lower overall cost of ownership. Less rework is required when upgrading either SAP or LS Central, and maintenance is much simpler. Central Connect offloads the heavy lifting of data transformation, meaning SAP spend less time building custom interfaces. With pre-built base Central Connect, mapping flexibility, and Azure automation, integration projects can be delivered faster. Teams spend more time on business logic and less on plumbing. Finally, by centralizing integration in one hub and reducing customization in SAP, long-term support goes down, fewer systems are touched during upgrades, less retesting is needed, and new processes can be introduced with lesser effort. A little bit about the supported versions. As you can see here on the slide, we are focusing on SAP. Other ERPs are supported as well, but today we are focusing on SAP. We support both public and private cloud of SAP. If there are specific customizations, it would require some discussions since the public cloud is not as flexible as the private cloud. Some older versions of SAP can be supported. If you have an older version and want to use the solution, don't hesitate to contact us and we will investigate with you if it's possible to connect with Central Connect. Both SaaS and on-prem versions of Business Central are supported. And finally, since we use XML documents and data mappings in the user interface, we avoid version lock-ins. If there are upgrades on either SAP or BC side, the user might need to make some manual changes within the data mapping, but not so much of coding changes. Now a few points about the licensing. As of now, the Central Connect is an extension app on top of LS Central, so LS Central is still required to be installed and licensed. The license for Central Connect is sold as a fixed monthly subscription. And finally, the customer is set up and maintain the Azure environment and handle cost of running the environment. Now here I would like to tell you a little bit about our development and where we are heading with that. We have streamlined the user interface in the Central Connect app. We have improved the logging mechanism with both functionality and more configuration available. We are actively adding new logic to the Central Connect app, and the latest is the work on the transaction sending. Today we support the sales order to flow from LS Central and into SAP. When the statement is posted in LS Central, we are adding the option for the customer to send transactions over near real time to Azure and from Azure to SAP. And to mention some other backlog items, then alongside with the transactions, we are working on the inventory documents. And for example, the inventory adjustment, picking, receiving results between system near real time. And finally, we are looking at ways to enable AI for Central Connect, for example, to let AI analyze and notify user if an error is logged in the logging mechanism. And we have some other ideas as well. We start with this. So the data flow. Now a little bit about the data, how the data flow works. Here we have an example where data flows from SAP and to LS Central. In this case, we start from left, where we have the data flowing from SAP master data and something we call retail documents, which are the inventory documents related to purchase, transfers, sales, and customer orders, and possibly more. When we then have the Azure function that is either triggering the data flow from SAP or gets initiated by SAP depending on customer needs. For example, product information, prices, vendors, or anything you want to maintain in SAP would flow from SAP and into LS Central with the help of Central Connect. So the process is that the XML document we get from SAP is inserted into Azure Storage and message queue. BC is then monitoring the message queue, pops out the message in the UI indicating there is a new package waiting for processing. It processes the data package with data mapping that has been configured in Central Connect. During the import, it goes through standard insert validation. If validation is passed, the data will be inserted into LS Central tables. If something happens on the way, Azure has mechanism to log any errors, and we also have logging mechanism in Central Connect that catches errors if anything happens. In this slide, we have current scenario that is available today, except for the retail documents, which is in our backlog. In this scenario, we go the opposite way, or from LS Central and into SAP. We send the sales data that is posted once the statement posting is done over to Azure function, which does the packaging of the data if any specific packaging is needed, and forward it to SAP. As you can see and relate to the retail document there, which is referring to picking and receiving, stock counting, inventory adjustments, and orderings, which will flow from LS Central and into SAP in near real time. Now let's look at our new transaction process. On the right side, LS Central is responsible for all daily operations, POS, sales, returns, adjustments, and back office processes. During the day, transactions and retail documents are sent to Azure near real time, so SAP Retail always has an up-to-date picture of store activity. At the end of the day, LS Central runs its statement posting procedure. This produces a set of data such as tender types, totals, and any discrepancies or missing entries. That end-of-day package is exported to Azure Storage and finally validated, summarized, and sent to SAP for reconciliation. Now let's look at the big picture. With all of the above demonstrations in one diagram, On the left side, we have the SAP, which is the system of record for master data flowing from SAP and to LS Central. It is also the system that gets transactional data back from LS Central. In the middle, we have Central Connect on Azure, which acts as a decoupling hub. It handles master data sync and from SAP and transaction inventory incoming from LS Central. Data gets sent into Azure Storage that is transformed by Azure Functions and delivered to SAP via API, or depending on the scenario. Transactions are sent near real time, same as for the inventory information. LS Central client handles setup and configuration. All retail data based for the POS, discounts, and hardware setup, and data mapping in Central Connect ensures SAP masters aligns with the LS Central structure. POS terminals captures the transactions that are concluded, and they are sent near real time to SAP via Central Connect. Finally, we have the inventory lookup, which is done through API, which calls home and get the status of the inventory. If other lookups are needed, such as third-party gift card balance status or other features, then that can be added in cooperation with consulting and the customer. Okay. Depending on the customer needs, if the e-commerce orders work on the SAP backend, those data will then flow from SAP and into LS Central. If, on the other hand, it's running on LS Central, the results will need to flow down to SAP. This can vary depending on the scenario. Those topics will be discussed with the customer, since this is usually something that varies between customers. And similar with the member management, there are a couple of different scenarios that are possible here. First, we have the inbuilt LS Central member management system. We also have done a few integrations in the past with external loyalty systems. Usually this is something we would discuss with the customer case by case. And to mention some of the requirements, then we assume the data is going to be stored in Azure Storage, and if other services is currently in use, such as Amazon Web Service or Google, that is something we can investigate. The current format that is supported is XML, but there is also nothing that says that this cannot be JSON or CSV or something else. If XML is not an option for your business, we are willing to work with you on finding a good solution together on that. And to summarize, in our architecture, SAP S/4HANA remains the system of record for financial posting, inventory, and planning. LS Central is executing system for retail and POS operations, while Central Connect acts as a integration brain between the two. Central Connect own the mapping logic, converting SAP master data into LS Central formats and retail transactions back into SAP material documents, deliveries, and postings. This approach keeps LS Central flexible while reducing custom development inside SAP. Azure Functions and Storage provide the transport and reliability layer where monitoring can be set up. On the outbound side, SAP distributes master data through Central Connect, which maps it into required LS Central structures. This ensures both systems to remain aligned while keeping SAP as a golden source of data. The solution is extensible new functionalities or support to third-party application can be made available easily.
Thank you, Sævar. As you see, the sort of work that has been done over the last months is to sort of go deeper into the inventory part. If you were a part of the original webinar, we said that the inventory management piece needed to be defined a bit better, but we've done some work in that area. The idea is, of course, that we don't want to keep inventory registered in two places. And our concern was also that if you have a lot of transactions which these Central Connect customers typically have, you would start to build up a lot of sort of item ledger value entries on the BC side, which would make the system sort of, you know, I'm not going to say slower to upgrade, but you would need to manage these entries, and those can be, well, you cannot just delete them. That's the issue, because if you delete them, you lose your sort of cost adjustments, you lose your cost price history, that type of stuff. So the idea was that we would simply use the transfer documents. You would create something looking like a transfer document on the SAP side, which you then can receive on the into Alessandro/BC. And what you really don't maybe sort of think about in the beginning or realize in the beginning is that you don't really need sort of a inventory level on the receiving side. You just need to do a blind receiving as well as you can do a blind stock count. So this should make the whole system much easier than to sort of maintain and operate, as Sævar mentioned, than to just have to maintain inventory in two places. Another topic that we've also sort of refined a bit from the last session is the e-commerce side, and it's pretty clear that most of the customers utilizing Central Connect will have some sort of e-commerce already existing. It basically means that if you want to run a process like buy online, pick up in store, or click and collect, as it's commonly known as well, you will have to do some adjustments on the existing e-commerce platform to facilitate that, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense to have e-commerce running on the BC side unless you have some well, unless that's something you would really like to do, because all of the warehousing and distribution is probably going to be in SAP anyway, and that's why it makes things like inventory availability, order promising, that type of stuff easier to run, because that's where you have access to all of that data. Sævar, anything you want to add?
No, I think we have covered most of it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for attending, and see you in the next webinar. Have a nice day.
Thank you.